Welcome back to The Explainer. We're jumping right into something incredibly fascinating today. Have you ever wondered what actually happens, legally speaking, when two massive steel behemoths crash into each other out in the open ocean? I mean, logistically, it's a total nightmare, but the legal framework behind it, it's actually a masterpiece of structured logic. Today, we're breaking down Chapter I of the Indian Maritime Liability Statutes. We're going to untangle the complex mechanics of who pays for what, and we're going to use a very clear four-rule framework to do it.
All right, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with jurisdiction on the water, and then hit our four main rules: accidental collisions, single fault, shared blame, and court and salvage. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. Jurisdiction on the water. Because before we figure out who is paying, we need to establish exactly who these laws apply to.
So, Indian vessels are obviously bound by these statutes. But what's really interesting here is that these rules also apply to any foreign vessel, as long as it's currently at a port or place in India, and that includes coastal waters. Basically, whether you're flying the Indian flag or you're just an international freighter passing through, if you bump into another ship in Indian territory, you are playing by the rules we're about to cover.
Oh, and a super important caveat before we move on. Chapter I, which is what we are focusing on today, is strictly about physical collisions. It explicitly excludes pollution damage. So if a ship crashes and spills oil, those environmental claims get kicked over to Chapter 3 or 4. For this explainer, we are keeping our focus laser sharp on the crunching metal of the ships themselves.
Moving right along to Rule 1, accidental collisions. This is the simplest scenario you can have under Section 154.
See that big zero? That is exactly how much money changes hands if the crash is truly accidental or if the cause simply can't be determined. The ocean is wildly unpredictable. Sometimes a freak wave hits, or a sudden storm rolls in, and no captain is actually acting negligently. Things just happen.
And the law handles this perfectly. Section 154, subsection 1 simply says, each vessel shall bear its own damage. If nobody is at fault, nobody gets a payout. You fix your hull, they fix theirs, and everyone moves on. It's designed to prevent endless, painful litigation over unavoidable acts of nature.
But what if it wasn't an act of nature? That brings us to Rule 2, single fault.
Under Section 154, subsection 2, if exactly one vessel is undeniably to blame, the financial hit is absolutely massive. The at-fault vessel bears joint and several liability for practically everything. They pay for the other vessel's damage, the lost cargo, the crew and passengers' property, and most critically, they hold the liability for any loss of life or personal injury. It is total, comprehensive accountability. You make the mistake, you foot the bill.
Of course, maritime accidents are rarely that black and white, right? Usually, it's a chain reaction of bad decisions. Enter Rule 3, shared blame.
This is really the heart of maritime collision law. Under Section 154, subsection 3, reinforced by Section 155, subsection 1, if two or more ships are at fault, the liability is sliced up based on the exact degree of fault. So say Vessel A made a slightly worse navigational error and is 60% at fault, while Vessel B contributed 40%, well, that's exactly how the damages are divided. They don't just split the bill evenly right out of the gate, the law demands precise mathematical fairness.
But here's the catch, and it's a smart one. The law acknowledges that the ocean is chaotic. Sometimes ships sink, evidence washes away, and it is physically impossible to figure out who was 60% wrong and who was 40% wrong. So if it's impossible to establish the exact degrees of fault, the law forces a tiebreaker, a straight 50-50 split, half and half. It forces a resolution even when the exact details are swallowed by the sea.
And this next point is absolutely crucial. Take a look at this quote from Section 155, subsection 2. Nothing in this section shall be construed to render any vessel liable for any loss or damage to which her fault has not contributed. Translation, you only pay for the specific mess you made. If your 40% mistake dented the hull, but the other ship's 60% mistake started a massive fire that destroyed the cargo, you aren't paying for the fire. It's highly targeted liability.
One quick aside before we close out Rule 3. Even with all these strict proportionality rules, Section 155, subsection 3, notes that pre-existing contracts or other legal limits still apply. So if a company has a valid, prior legal agreement limiting their liability, these collision statutes don't just bulldoze over it.
All right, taking us off the water and into the courtroom, let's look at Rule 4, court and salvage.
Now, you've probably been wondering, who actually calculates these fault percentages? Well, Section 154, subsection 4 answers that. The High Court brings in assessors, appointed by the central government. These are the experts tasked with figuring out exactly who messed up and by how much. They attend the proceedings, write up their findings, and present them straight to the High Court. They are essentially the analytical brains of the whole operation.
So here's a question for you. What about the actual cleanup and rescue? When ships crash, towing a crippled, massive freighter back to shore is a logistical and financial nightmare. Does the law just cover the dented metal?
Not a chance. Under Section 155, subsection 4, the legal definition of damage explicitly includes salvage and other consequent expenses. So if you're found to be 60% at fault for a collision, yeah, you are also paying 60% of that multi-million-dollar towing and rescue operation.
So we've got this meticulously structured framework, from zero liability accidents to precise, mathematically calculated shared blame. But I want to leave you with this wild thought to chew on. When two colossal ships collide in the pitch black of a screaming storm, how can an assessor sitting in a courtroom truly measure the exact degree of fault? The statutes give us a flawless legal logic, but applying human law to the sheer chaos of the ocean, that'll always be an incredible challenge. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.